There are moments in life when you feel buried under an avalanche of injustice, with no way out. But those very moments can become the turning point where everything changes. I was fired for being late, a complete fabrication. Yet I had 3 emails in my possession that would make the entire HR department go silent, right in front of the manager who had humiliated me. This is the story of how I turned those 3 simple emails into the perfect revenge. My name is Emily Hart. And at 32, I never imagined I'd be starting over from scratch in Columbus, Ohio. The divorce papers had been finalized just 6 months ago, leaving me with a mortgage that felt heavier each month and a determination to rebuild my life one paycheck at a time. Transway Solutions wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills and kept the bank from calling about the house payment. The office sat in a glass tower downtown, one of those buildings that looked impressive from the outside but felt suffocating once you badged in. Our floor, the logistics department, hummed with the constant clicking of keyboards and the occasional burst of forced laughter from the break room. The smell of burnt coffee permanently hung in the air, mixing with the artificial coolness of the air conditioning that never quite worked right. I'd been there for 3 years, long enough to know which vending machines actually worked and which bathroom stalls to avoid. Long enough to build a reputation as someone who got things done without drama. The clients liked me. I answered their calls on the second ring, remembered their names, and actually solved their problems instead of transferring them to another department. Last quarter, I'd received more positive feedback cards than anyone else on our team, which should have been a good thing. But that's when Mark Reynolds became my problem. Mark had been promoted to logistics manager 18 months ago, and he wore that title like a crown. Mid-40s, with thinning hair he tried to hide with too much gel, and suits that always looked a size too small. He had this way of standing too close during conversations, breathing his coffee breath while explaining things you already knew. The kind of guy who scheduled 7 a.m. meetings just to prove he got there early, then spent the first 15 minutes talking about his golf game. The real issue with Mark wasn't his management style, though that was bad enough. It was his ego. He couldn't stand that clients specifically asked for me by name. That when corporate visited last spring, they spent more time at my desk than in his office. That the regional director had publicly thanked me, not him, for saving the Henderson account. "You know, Emily," he'd said one afternoon, hovering over my cubicle wall like a vulture. "Being a team player means sharing the spotlight." His smile never reached his eyes. "We wouldn't want anyone thinking you're trying to show up your colleagues, would we?" I'd simply nodded and turned back to my computer, but I could feel his stare burning into my back. That's when the real problems started. First came the schedule changes. Our department had flexible hours, a perk they'd advertised during recruitment. As long as you worked your 8 hours and attended mandatory meetings, you could start anywhere between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. I usually came in at 8:30, which let me avoid the worst of the morning traffic on I-270 and still get home before dark. But Mark started scheduling urgent team meetings at 7:30 a.m., always with less than a day's notice. Then he'd make pointed comments when I arrived at my usual time on non-meeting days. "Nice of you to join us, Emily," he'd say, loud enough for everyone to hear, even though I was perfectly within policy. The office culture at Transway was typical corporate America. Everyone stressed about KPIs, quarterly reviews, and trying to look busy even when there wasn't much to do. But under Mark's management, our department became something else. It became a place where you watched your back, documented everything, and started updating your resume just in case. Living alone after the divorce meant I couldn't afford to lose this job. The mortgage payment took half my salary, and David had left me with his share of the credit card debt as a parting gift. Some nights, I'd sit at my kitchen table with a calculator and a glass of cheap wine, trying to figure out how many months I could survive without a paycheck. The answer was always the same: not many. So I put up with Mark's passive-aggressive comments. I attended his pointless meetings where he'd spend 40 minutes explaining something that could have been a 2-line email. I smiled when he took credit for my work in front of upper management. I even stayed late to fix his mistakes before the clients noticed them. But I kept every email, every single one. 3 years of working in corporate America had taught me that lesson. Document everything. Because someday, you might need it. I just didn't know how soon that day would come. The harassment started subtly, the way it always does in corporate America. Mark began with the time cards, scrutinizing every minute of my day like a forensic accountant looking for fraud. Emily, I noticed you clocked in at 8:34 yesterday, he said during our Monday morning team meeting, holding up a printed timesheet for everyone to see. Company policy states 8:30. We need to discuss your punctuality issues. 4 minutes. He was making a scene over 4 minutes, while Brad from accounting regularly strolled in at 9:15 with his Starbucks, and nobody said a word. I was at my desk at 8:30, I replied calmly. The system was down, so I couldn't clock in immediately. Excuses don't serve our clients. Mark shot back, his face flushing slightly. Perhaps you should arrive earlier to account for technical difficulties. The room went silent. My colleagues suddenly found their phones fascinating, avoiding eye contact. Jennifer, who sat next to me and had witnessed me trying to log in that morning, said nothing. That's when I learned another truth about office politics. When someone in power targets you, you become radioactive. Nobody wants to catch what you have. The emails started soon after. Mark would CC the entire department on messages that should have been private conversations. Team, please note that Emily will be adjusting her schedule to ensure prompt arrival. We all need to set better examples of professionalism. Or my personal favorite, following up on my third request for the Henderson report. Emily, as discussed, timeliness is crucial for client satisfaction. The Henderson report wasn't due for another week, and he knew it. But here's what Mark didn't count on. His need to look important in writing would become his downfall. Every criticized moment, every public humiliation, every twisted fact, he put it all in emails. And I saved every single one. One Thursday afternoon. Things escalated. Mark called me into his office, closing the door behind me with a soft click that felt like a trap springing shut. Emily, we need to discuss your performance, he began, settling into his oversized leather chair. Several team members have expressed concerns about your availability. Which team members? I asked, knowing full well no one had complained. That's confidential, but the pattern is concerning. You're often away from your desk. Your flexible schedule makes collaboration difficult, and frankly, your attitude has become problematic. My attitude. The rage that bubbled up in my chest nearly choked me. This man, who spent half his day watching golf videos on YouTube, was questioning my work ethic. I'd like to see specific examples, I said, keeping my voice steady. And I'd like HR present for any future performance discussions. His eyes narrowed. That won't be necessary. We're just having a friendly chat. But since you bring up HR, you should know I'm documenting everything. So was I. But I didn't tell him that. The next week, Mark sent an email that would later prove to be his first major mistake. Emily, I'm approving your request to work from home this Friday for your apartment maintenance. However, please ensure you're available via phone and email from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. The problem, I'd never requested to work from home. He'd told me verbally to stay home because he'd scheduled a client visit and didn't want me there to confuse the relationship dynamics, as he'd put it. But now he was creating a paper trail that made it look like I was asking for special favors. I replied immediately, professionally. Thank you for accommodating the schedule change you requested. I'll be available during the specified hours. Then I forwarded the entire exchange to my personal email, along with the original client visit calendar invitation that showed my name crossed off. The psychological pressure was getting to me. I started having anxiety attacks in the parking lot before work. My hands would shake as I badged in each morning, wondering what fresh hell awaited me. I stopped eating lunch in the break room, choosing instead to eat crackers at my desk to avoid giving Mark any ammunition about taking too long of a break. One evening, after another day of Mark's mind games, I called my best friend, Samantha Lewis. Maybe I should just quit, I said. exhaustion seeping through every word. Find something else. With what savings? She asked gently. Emily, you can't let him win. Start documenting everything. Save every email, every message. Record dates and times of verbal conversations. Build your case. What case? He's the manager. HR always sides with management. Not if you have proof, not if he's stupid enough to put his harassment in writing. She was right, of course. But I didn't know then that Mark was about to hand me everything I needed. His ego, his need to control, his desperation to push me out, it would all come together in 3 perfect emails that would destroy him. The tension in the office became unbearable. Other colleagues started noticing, shooting me sympathetic looks when Mark wasn't watching. But sympathy doesn't pay mortgages. And their silence in meetings told me everything I needed to know about where their loyalties lay. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I arrived at 8:25, grabbed my usual terrible coffee from the break room, and settled in at my desk. I had 3 client calls scheduled and a report due by noon. Normal day, normal stress. Until I saw the email from Mark sent at 7:45 a.m. Please see me in my office immediately upon arrival. My stomach dropped. The words, immediately upon arrival, were never good. I knocked on his doorframe at 8:31. Mark was sitting behind his desk, and standing next to him was Patricia from HR, holding a manila folder. My legs suddenly felt like water. Sit down, Emily, Mark said, his voice carrying a satisfaction that made my skin crawl. Patricia wouldn't make eye contact. I sat, my hands gripping my coffee mug to stop them from shaking. Emily, Mark began, leaning back in his chair like he was about to enjoy this. We've made the difficult decision to terminate your employment. Effective immediately. The world tilted. The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright, too harsh. What? Why? Chronic tardiness, Mark said smoothly. You've been warned multiple times about your punctuality issues, yet the behavior continues. We have documentation of 17 instances in the past month alone. 17 instances, my voice cracked. That's impossible. I haven't been late. The records speak for themselves, Mark interrupted, sliding a paper across the desk. Security badge data shows consistent arrivals after 8:30 a.m. I stared at the paper, numbers swimming before my eyes. Half of these dates were days he'd told me to work from home. Others were the flexible schedule days that had been approved months ago. This is wrong, I said, looking at Patricia desperately. These dates include approved work from home days and… The decision is final, Patricia said quietly, speaking to a spot just over my shoulder. We'll need your badge, company laptop, and any other Transway property. Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings. Security? The word came out as a whisper. 3 years of perfect reviews, of client praise, of working late and coming early. And they were going to march me out like a criminal? Standard procedure, Mark said, and I swear he almost smiled. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. Gary from security, a kind man who'd always smiled at me in the mornings, stood silently by my desk as I shoved personal items into a cardboard box. My colleagues kept their heads down, typing furiously at nothing, pretending not to see. Jennifer was actually crying, but she still wouldn't look at me. My hands shook as I pulled my kids' drawings, not my kids, my sister's. But they'd made them for Aunt Emmy's boring office, from my cubicle wall. The photo from last year's company picnic, where I'd won the 3-legged race. The little succulent I'd managed to keep alive for 2 years. My favorite coffee mug. The one that said, World's Okayest Employee. That's company property, Mark said, appearing beside us and pointing at the mug. It has the Transway logo. It was a 50-cent mug from a company event, but I placed it back on the desk, my face burning with humiliation. The walk to the elevator felt endless. Gary carried my box while I kept my eyes straight ahead, feeling the weight of every stare. Someone, I think it was Robert from IT, started to say something, maybe goodbye, maybe good luck. But Mark's sharp look cut him off. In the elevator, Gary finally spoke. "This ain't right, Emily. Everyone knows it ain't right." I couldn't respond. If I opened my mouth, I would either scream or sob, and I wouldn't give Mark the satisfaction of hearing either from the hallway. The parking lot was nearly empty at 9 a.m. Gary handed me my box at my car, patting my shoulder awkwardly. "You take care now," he said, then walked back into the building, leaving me standing alone in the gray morning drizzle that had just started to fall. I sat in my car for 30 minutes, unable to move. The box of my things sat in the passenger seat like a coffin for my career. 3 years, reduced to a cardboard box that wasn't even full. The rain grew heavier, drumming on the roof, and finally, the tears came. I cried for the injustice of it, for the mortgage payment due next week, for the humiliation of being escorted out, for the cowardice of my colleagues, for everything. My phone buzzed with texts from Jennifer and others. "So sorry. Can't believe this. Let me know if you need anything." But none of them had spoken up when it mattered. Finally, I drove home to my empty house, the one I might lose now, and collapsed on my couch. The TV stayed off. The silence was complete except for the rain against the windows. This was rock bottom, I thought. This was the moment where everything fell apart. I was wrong about that. Rock bottom was 2 hours later when I checked my bank account and realized my final paycheck would barely cover the mortgage. Rock bottom was calculating that I had maybe 6 weeks of expenses if I ate ramen and kept the heat at 60 degrees. But I was also wrong about something else. This wasn't where everything fell apart. This was where everything changed, because Mark Reynolds had made one crucial error in his eagerness to destroy me. He'd been so focused on his fabricated tardiness records that he'd forgotten about his own emails. The ones where he praised my punctuality. The ones where he approved schedule changes. The ones where he contradicted everything he'd just used to fire me. 3 emails, sitting in my personal inbox where I'd forwarded them weeks ago, just in case. 3 emails that would end him. The first 48 hours after being fired were the darkest of my life. I didn't leave the couch except to use the bathroom. Empty wine bottles accumulated on the coffee table. I ignored 23 calls from my mom and 12 from Samantha. The shame was suffocating. How could I tell them I'd been fired for being late when it was all a lie? Who would believe me? Wednesday blurred into Thursday. I started doing the math obsessively. $2,147 in savings. $1,750 mortgage payment. $380 car payment. $145 insurance. $200 minimum on credit cards. The numbers spiraled in my head like a tornado, each calculation bringing me closer to the edge of panic. 6 weeks, maybe 7 if I stopped eating altogether. By Thursday night, I'd moved from the couch to the floor, staring at the ceiling. When my phone rang for the 100th time, Samantha again. This time, I answered. "Emily. Thank God, I've been worried sick. Jennifer told me what happened." "Jennifer," I said bitterly. She watched it happen and said nothing. She's terrified of Mark. They all are. But listen to me, this isn't over. You can fight this. With what money? Lawyers cost thousands I don't have. And it's my word against his. He has documentation. Falsified documentation. Emily, you've been telling me for months about his harassment. You said you were saving emails. What good are emails about schedule changes when he has security badge data? Have you even looked at them? Really looked at them? I hadn't. The thought of opening my laptop, of seeing the Transway logos, of reliving any part of that place made me physically ill. You're not thinking clearly. Come over, bring your laptop and any emails you saved. We're going to go through everything. Sam, there's no point. Get your ass over here now, or I'm coming to drag you out myself. An hour later, I was sitting at Samantha's kitchen table, laptop open, while she poured coffee strong enough to wake the dead. She was still in her prosecutor suit from work. Sam was an assistant district attorney, the friend who'd gotten all the brains while I'd gotten all the bad luck. "Show me everything," she ordered. Every email, every message, every documentation. I opened my personal email and searched for Mark's name. 247 results. I'd forwarded more than I remembered. Jesus, Emily, you've got a whole case file here. Why didn't you go to HR sooner? Because HR sides with management, you know that. Not when management is this stupid. Look at this one. She pointed at an email from 3 weeks ago. Mark explicitly says, Emily, thank you for adjusting your schedule to come in early at 6:30 a.m. to help with the Morrison account. Your flexibility and punctuality are appreciated. So, Emily, this is dated 5 days before one of the supposed tardiness incidents. How can he praise your punctuality and then claim you were chronically late? She was right. But it was the next email that made her actually gasp. Holy shit, Em. Look at this one from last month. I leaned over to read. From Mark Reynolds. To Emily Hart, CC, Regional Management Team. Subject. Client Commendation Team. I wanted to share that Emily has received another commendation from the Henderson Group for her reliability and consistent availability. As her manager, I can confirm that Emily maintains excellent attendance and is often the first one in the office. This dedication is what we should all strive for. He CC'd regional management, Sam said slowly. He put in writing, to his bosses, that you have excellent attendance and are often first in the office. When was this sent? 6 weeks ago. And when did the supposed tardiness problems begin? I thought back. His documentation showed issues starting 5 weeks ago. Sam slammed her hand on the table. So 1 week he's praising your punctuality to regional management, and the next week you suddenly develop chronic tardiness? Emily, this is gold. But it was the third email that made even Sam, the seasoned prosecutor, whistle low. From Mark Reynolds. To Emily Hart. Date, Monday, 8:47 a.m., the day before I was fired. Subject, schedule change, confirmation. Emily, confirming our discussion from Friday, you're approved to work your adjusted schedule this week, 9 a.m., 5:30 p.m., to accommodate your medical appointments. Please ensure all client calls are covered. Medical appointments? Sam asked. I never had medical appointments. He told me verbally to adjust my schedule because he had morning meetings with clients and didn't want me there. But look what he put in writing. He approved a 9 a.m. start time on Monday, then fired you Tuesday for not being there at 8:30. Emily, do you understand what this is? This is a slam dunk wrongful termination case. This is retaliation, discrimination, and about 6 other violations. For the first time in 3 days, I felt something other than despair. It was anger, clean, bright, energizing anger. But lawyers, you don't need a lawyer yet. Start with HR. Go over Mark's head, take these emails, and demand a meeting. If they refuse, then mention the words wrongful termination lawsuit and watch how fast they scramble. They won't care. I'm nobody. You're an employee with documented evidence that your manager lied to terminate you. Trust me, they care. Companies hate lawsuits, especially ones they'll lose. Print everything, make copies, organize it chronologically. And Emily? She grabbed my shoulders. Stop acting like you've lost. You haven't even started fighting yet. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I organized. Every email, every timestamp, every contradiction. I created a timeline showing Mark's praise alongside his supposed complaints. I found 42 instances where he'd approved schedule changes, then marked me late on those exact days. I discovered he'd been documenting tardiness on days I'd been assigned to work from home. By 3 a.m., I had a binder 2 inches thick. By 5 a.m., I'd drafted my email to HR, CCing the regional management team Mark had so helpfully included in his praise of my punctuality. The subject line was simple: urgent, wrongful termination evidence requiring immediate review. My hands didn't shake as I hit send. This time, I wasn't the one who should be afraid. Mark Reynolds had given me the weapons to destroy him. He just didn't know it yet. Friday morning, 7:23 a.m., my phone rang. The number was Transway's main line. Ms. Hart, this is Director Patricia Williams from HR. We've received your email and documentation. Can you come in for a meeting this afternoon? The same Patricia who'd stood silent while Mark fired me. I wanted to tell her to go to hell, but Samantha's voice echoed in my head. Play smart, not emotional. I'll be there at 2 p.m., I said coolly. I'll be bringing representation. That won't be necessary. This is just a preliminary discussion. 2 p.m. with representation. Or we can skip this meeting and go straight to the labor board. Silence. Then, 2 p.m. is fine. We'll see you then. I didn't have a lawyer, couldn't afford one, but I had something better. Samantha had taken the afternoon off, and while she couldn't represent me officially, she could sit beside me as a friend for support. A friend who happened to be a prosecutor and knew exactly what questions to ask. Wear your best outfit, Sam instructed over lunch. Look like someone who's about to own them, because you are. I chose my navy suit, the one I'd worn to my sister's wedding. Professional, serious, expensive looking. Nothing like the broken woman who'd been escorted out 3 days ago. Walking back into Transway's lobby felt surreal. Gary at the security desk did a double take, then gave me the smallest nod of encouragement. I signed in as a visitor, the irony not lost on me. The elevator ride to the 5th floor stretched forever. Each floor that passed, I repeated Sam's words. You have the evidence. They know they're screwed. You're in control. The conference room was fuller than expected. Patricia was there, along with Thomas Wright, the senior VP of operations, 2 levels above Mark, a legal representative I didn't recognize, and Mark himself, looking significantly less smug than he had 3 days ago. Ms. Hart, thank you for coming, Thomas began, his tone carefully neutral. We've reviewed your documentation. And I placed my binder on the table with a deliberate thud. There appear to be some discrepancies in the termination process. Discrepancies? Samantha spoke for the first time. Is that what we're calling falsified documentation now? And you are? The legal representative asked. A friend, here for support. Sam smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Though I'm curious how Transway explains terminating an employee for tardiness when you have written proof from Mr. Reynolds praising her punctuality to regional management. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. We're looking into that. I opened my binder, pulling out the first email. January 15th, Mark confirms I have excellent attendance and am often the first one in the office. This was sent to you, Mr. Wright. Thomas nodded slowly. February 3rd, I pulled out another paper. Mark approves my adjusted schedule for the week, confirming 9 a.m. start times. Yet I was marked late those exact days in his termination report. Mark started to speak. Those approvals were, I'm not finished. My voice was steel. February 27th. Mark writes, Emily's flexibility and punctuality are appreciated while documenting tardiness issues supposedly happening that same week. I laid out all 3 emails side by side. March 4th, the day before my termination. Mark approves my 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. schedule in writing. March 5th. I'm fired for not being here at 8:30 a.m. The room was silent. Mr. Reynolds, Thomas said slowly, can you explain these contradictions? Mark's face had gone from red to pale. The emails were, there was a miscommunication. I meant to document her improved attendance after warnings. Warnings that don't exist, I interrupted. I never received a single written warning about attendance, because there were no attendance problems. Furthermore, Sam added, pulling out her phone, Ohio is a one-party consent state for recordings. Emily, did you happen to record any conversations with Mr. Reynolds? I hadn't, but Mark didn't know that. His face went white. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Mark stammered. No misunderstanding, Thomas said, his voice sharp now. Mr. Reynolds, did you falsify attendance records to terminate Ms. Hart? Aye. The records aren't falsified. The badge data shows her arriving for her approved schedule. Patricia interrupted, looking at her laptop. I've pulled the actual records. They align with Ms. Hart's emails about approved schedule changes. Thomas turned to me. Ms. Hart, what are you seeking here? Sam had coached me on this. Don't ask for too little, but don't be unreasonable. Full reinstatement with back pay, a formal apology in writing. Mr. Reynolds removed from any supervisory position over me, and a review of all terminations he's overseen in the past year. That's, Mark started. Or, I continued. We can discuss a severance package that includes a year's salary, continuation of benefits, and a neutral reference, plus a written admission of wrongful termination. The legal representative whispered urgently to Thomas. Patricia typed furiously on her laptop. Mark looked like he might vomit. Can you give us a moment? Thomas asked. Sam and I stepped into the hallway. My hands were shaking, but from adrenaline now, not fear. You're doing amazing, Sam whispered. They're terrified. That ask for reviewing past terminations? Genius. They're imagining how many other lawsuits might be coming. 15 minutes later, we were called back in. Mark wasn't in the room. Ms. Hart, Thomas began. We're prepared to offer 6 months' salary as severance, continuation of benefits, and a positive reference letter. In exchange, you'll sign a non-disclosure agreement about the circumstances of your departure. No NDA, I said firmly. I won't be silenced about workplace harassment. 8 months' salary, benefits, and a glowing reference. But we need the NDA. Sam touched my arm, our signal that this was a good offer. And Mark? I asked. Thomas's jaw tightened. Mr. Reynolds is being placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Not fired, but it was something. I looked at Patricia, who wouldn't meet my eyes, then at Thomas, who seemed genuinely angry about the situation. I'll take it, but I want the check today. That's impossible. Today, or Monday morning, I'm calling the Labor Board and the Columbus Dispatch. I wonder how Transway's clients will feel about managers who falsify records. Thomas stood. You'll have a cashier's check in 2 hours. 2 hours felt like 2 years. Sam and I sat in a coffee shop across from Transway's building, my leg bouncing nervously under the table. Stop second-guessing yourself, Sam said. You won. 8 months' salary is more than fair. But Mark still has a job. He's on leave, not fired. Emily, you planted a bomb in his career. The investigation will find more dirt. Guys like him always have more victims. He's done it Transway. They just need to build the legal case to avoid a wrongful termination suit from him. My phone buzzed. Patricia. Your check is ready. Please come to reception. Walking back into that building for what I hoped would be the last time, I felt different. Lighter. Vindicated. Gary gave me a full smile this time, even a subtle thumbs up. Patricia met me in the lobby with an envelope. The check, reference letter, and separation agreement. Legal needs your signature. Back in the same conference room, the legal representative walked me through the documents. The NDA was standard. I couldn't discuss the specific terms of the settlement or make defamatory statements about the company. But, crucially, it didn't prevent me from sharing my experience with harassment or discrimination in general terms. One more thing, Thomas Wright said, entering the room. Off the record, Ms. Hart, we've already discovered 3 other questionable terminations under Mr. Reynolds. Your documentation started something. I signed the papers, took my check, and walked out of Transway Solutions for the final time. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and stared at the check. $73,000, 8 months of salary in my hand. Enough to pay off the credit cards, catch up on the mortgage, and have a cushion while I found something better. My phone started buzzing immediately. Word travels fast in corporate America. Jennifer. OMG, Mark just got escorted out. Security packed his office. Robert from IT. Did you really get him fired? You're a legend. Even quiet Marcus from accounting. Heard what happened, good for you. He tried the same thing with me last year, but I didn't have proof. But the best message came Monday morning from someone unexpected. Emily, this is Thomas Wright. I wanted you to know that our investigation found systematic falsification of records affecting 7 employees. Mr. Reynolds' employment has been terminated with cause. We're reaching out to all affected former employees. Your courage in coming forward made a difference. I know Transway failed you, but you should be proud of what you've accomplished. I forwarded the message to Sam with just one word: victory. That afternoon, I got another call, this one from a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Hart, this is Rachel Chen from Logistics International. We heard through the grapevine about your situation at Transway. Your client references are impeccable. The Henderson Group specifically recommended we reach out. Would you be interested in discussing a senior analyst position? The salary is 20% above your previous role, with actual flexible scheduling. The interview was Thursday. I got the job on the spot 3 weeks later. I ran into Mark at a grocery store. He was in workout clothes, unshaven, looking older somehow. He saw me, started to approach, then thought better of it, but I walked right up to him. Emily, Stop. I don't need your apology. I don't need anything from you. But I want you to know something. I looked him straight in the eye. You thought you could destroy me because I was vulnerable, divorced, struggling, alone. You thought I'd disappear quietly. He couldn't meet my gaze. Instead, your cruelty gave me the push I needed to stand up for myself. I have a better job, better pay, and better bosses. You gave me freedom from that toxic place. So in a twisted way. Mark, thank you. Thank you for being so arrogant that you put all your lies in writing. I walked away, leaving him standing by the frozen vegetables, diminished and defeated. 6 months later, I heard through LinkedIn that Mark was still unemployed. Turns out, when you're fired with cause for falsifying company records, other companies aren't eager to hire you. Meanwhile, I'd been promoted, bought out my ex-husband's share of the house, and started dating a kind man who couldn't understand why anyone would treat employees badly. Jennifer messaged me last week. She's thinking about reporting her new manager to HR for harassment. She asked for advice. Document everything, I told her. Save every email, and never, ever let them make you feel powerless. Sometimes, 3 emails are all you need to change everything. She asked if I regretted how it all went down, if I wished I'd handled it differently. I thought about those dark days after the firing, the humiliation, the fear. Then I thought about the check, the new job, the look on Mark's face when he realized he'd been caught. No regrets, I typed back, just lessons learned. The truth is, I keep those 3 emails printed and framed in my home office now, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder. A reminder that even when someone holds all the institutional power, the truth, properly documented, is the greatest equalizer. Mark thought he was untouchable. But he forgot the first rule of corporate warfare. Never put your crimes in writing. And always, always underestimate the quiet ones at your own peril. The conference room on Friday afternoon was different from my termination meeting. This time, I chose where to sit, at the head of the table, facing the door. Power position. Samantha sat to my right, my binder of evidence centered perfectly in front of me. They filed in at exactly 2 p.m. Patricia from HR, looking exhausted. Thomas Wright, his jaw set in a hard line. The legal representative, a thin woman with sharp eyes. And Mark, who tried to take the seat across from me until Thomas directed him to the far end. Let's begin, Thomas said. But I raised my hand. Actually, I'd like to start. I opened my binder slowly, deliberately. Mr. Wright, are you aware that 3 days ago, Mr. Reynolds told you I had chronic tardiness issues? Yes, that was the stated reason for termination. I slid the first email across the table. Please read the highlighted portion out loud. Thomas cleared his throat. Emily maintains excellent attendance and is often the first one in the office. This is From Mark to regional management. 6 weeks ago. Interesting timing, I said calmly. Mark, when did my supposed attendance problems begin? Mark's mouth opened, closed, then opened again. You were warned multiple times. That's not what I asked. When did they begin? Patricia pulled up something on her laptop. According to the documentation provided, 5 weeks ago, so 1 week after praising my punctuality to regional management, I suddenly became chronically late. I let that hang in the air. Let's look at email number 2. This time, I stood up, walking slowly around the table as I spoke. Monday, March 4th, 8:47 a.m. Mr. Reynolds sends me this. I placed it in front of the legal representative. Please note the timestamp and the content. She read it, her eyebrows rising. He's approving a 9 a.m. start time for the week. And when was I terminated for tardiness? Tuesday, March 5th. Patricia said quietly, for not being here at 8:30. The legal representative actually gasped. He approved a schedule change the day before firing her for following it? It gets better, Samantha interjected. Emily, show them the third one. This was my favorite. I'd saved it for last. February 15th, Mark sends this email at 6:45 a.m. I paused for effect. Would you read it? Mark? His face was purple now. I don't. Read it. Thomas's voice was ice. Mark's hands shook as he took the paper. Emily, thank you for coming in early at 6:30 a.m. to help with the Morrison account. Your flexibility and punctuality are appreciated. I'm copying Regional to ensure your extra efforts are recognized. You CC'd Regional on that, Thomas asked incredulously. Now, Mark, I said, returning to my seat. Please explain how I could be chronically late when you yourself documented me arriving at 6:30 a.m.? These are taken out of context. What context? Samantha leaned forward. What possible context makes sense here? Either Emily had attendance issues or she didn't. Your own emails prove she didn't. The legal representative whispered urgently to Thomas. Patricia typed furiously, pulling up more records. Mr. Reynolds, Patricia said slowly. I'm looking at the badge data. On February 15th, Emily's badge was scanned at 6:27 a.m. On March 4th, it shows approved remote access for work from home, which you authorized. On 12 of the 17 dates you cited for tardiness, you had approved schedule modifications. I need to speak with my representative, Mark said desperately. You don't have a representative here, Thomas replied. This is an internal investigation. Ms. Hart is the one with representation. Though I'm just here as a friend, Sam added sweetly. I pulled out more papers. Would you like to see the other 39 emails where Mark contradicts his own termination report? Or should we discuss the email where he told me not to attend a client meeting because he didn't want me to confuse the relationship dynamics? Thomas held up his hand. Ms. Hart, what resolution are you seeking? This was the moment I'd rehearsed with Sam. I want the truth acknowledged. Mark falsified records to fire me. That's fraud. It's defamation. It's wrongful termination. And I'm betting I'm not the only one. You're making serious accusations, Mark started. No, I'm stating facts backed by evidence. I stacked my emails neatly. Your own writing. Mark, your own words. Thomas stood abruptly. Mr. Reynolds, you're suspended immediately pending investigation. Please surrender your badge and laptop to security. This is insane. You can't. I can, and I am. Thomas turned to me. Ms. Hart, we need to discuss compensation for this situation. Mark stood up so fast his chair fell backward. You're going to pay her? For what? She was a mediocre employee who... Enough! Thomas roared. Security is waiting outside. Mark, leave, now. The door opened. Gary stood there with another security officer. Mark looked at me with pure hatred, but I didn't flinch. I'd already won. As they escorted him out, he turned back one more time. You think you've won? You've just made an enemy. Mr. Reynolds, the legal representative interrupted. I strongly advise you to stop talking before you add threats to your list of violations. The door closed. The room fell silent. Thomas sat back down heavily. Ms. Hart, on behalf of Transway, I apologize. This is inexcusable. Patricia, I want a full audit of every termination Mark oversaw. Every single one. Already started, Patricia replied. We've found irregularities in at least 4 others. 5 others, I corrected. Marcus from accounting, Sarah from customer service, James from logistics, Patel from IT, and Rodriguez from shipping. They all left in the past year. All supposedly for performance issues. All were people who challenged Mark or got more recognition than him. Thomas stared at me. How do you know this? Because unlike Mark, they were actually good at their jobs. And good employees don't suddenly become bad ones overnight. I closed my binder. Check their files. I guarantee you'll find the same pattern. The legal representative nodded slowly. This is going to be a massive investigation. Yes, I agreed. It is. And Transway is going to make it right. For all of us. The check cleared on Monday. $73,000 sitting in my account, more money than I'd ever seen at once. But it wasn't about the money anymore, it was about the principle. It was about every employee who'd been crushed by a petty tyrant with a title. Tuesday morning, Thomas Wright called personally. Ms. Hart, the investigation is complete. 7 wrongful terminations, systematic harassment, and falsified documents. Mr. Reynolds' employment has been terminated with cause, and he's being referred for criminal fraud charges. Criminal charges? Falsifying company records is fraud. The prosecutor's office will be in touch. They'll want your testimony. The prosecutor turned out to be Sam's colleague. Small world, Mark would face potential jail time, but more importantly, he'd never work in management again. His LinkedIn profile disappeared within a week. Last I heard, he was working at his brother-in-law's car dealership in Indiana, far from any position of power. But the real satisfaction came from the others. Marcus called me crying. Transway offered him his job back with back pay and a promotion. Sarah got a settlement that let her open her own consulting firm. James, Patel, and Rodriguez all received compensation and glowing references that helped them land better positions elsewhere. Patricia from HR reached out a month later, off the record. Emily, I need to apologize. I should have spoken up during your termination. I knew something was wrong, but I was a coward. Why didn't you? Mark had Thomas's ear. I thought going against him would end my career. I was wrong. Staying silent nearly ended it anyway. I almost quit from the guilt. Next time, I told her, be brave. Someone's life might depend on it. My new job at Logistics International was everything Transway pretended to be. Real flexibility, genuine respect, and a manager who actually managed instead of manipulated. Within 6 months, I was promoted to senior analyst. Within a year, I was managing my own team, the right way. I kept those 3 emails, had them framed professionally, and hung them in my home office. Visitors always asked about them, and I'd tell the story. Every single person had their own Mark Reynolds tale. The supervisor who sabotaged them, the boss who took credit for their work, the manager who ruled through fear. But you fought back, they'd always say. I had evidence, I'd reply. Document everything, every praise, every criticism, every strange request. Save it all. You never know when your proof of innocence might be hiding in an email praising your guilt. One evening, almost 2 years later, I was at a networking event when someone grabbed my arm. It was Jennifer, my old coworker from Transway. Emily, oh my God, you're like a legend at the office. After what happened with Mark, everything changed. They implemented new oversight policies, anonymous HR reporting, and mandatory management training. You literally changed the entire company culture. I just saved some emails, I said modestly. No, you saved careers, maybe even lives. Do you know Marcus was considering? He was in a really dark place when Mark fired him. Your courage in speaking up saved him. That night, I looked at those 3 framed emails again. Such simple documents, mundane workplace correspondence that any of us delete without thinking. But they were also weapons, shields, and ultimately, keys to freedom. Mark thought he could erase me with lies. He thought I'd slink away in shame, another victim of corporate cruelty. He thought his position made him untouchable, that his word would always outweigh mine. He was wrong. Power isn't just about titles or positions. Sometimes it's about patience. Sometimes it's about keeping receipts. And sometimes it's about knowing when to reveal that the emperor has no clothes and having the emails to prove it. I still work in logistics, but now I also do speaking engagements about workplace harassment and the importance of documentation. I tell my story to rooms full of young professionals, teaching them to protect themselves from the Mark Reynolds of the world. The last slide of my presentation is always the same. Those 3 emails displayed on a massive screen. This, I tell them, pointing to those simple messages, is what justice looks like. Not a superhero cape or a dramatic courtroom scene. Just truth, documented and preserved, waiting for its moment. Someone always asks if I regret anything about how it went down. Just one thing, I answer. I regret not doing it sooner. I regret every day I let him make me feel small, every moment I doubted myself, every time I didn't trust my own worth. Then I look them in the eye, these young workers just starting their careers, full of hope and fear in equal measure. Don't wait as long as I did. Don't let them grind you down. Save everything, build your case, and when the moment comes, when they finally push too far, be ready. The sound of that conference room door closing behind Mark for the last time still echoes in my memory. But it's not a sound of ending anymore. It's the sound of a beginning, the sound of justice, the sound of every working person who ever stood up and said, "No more?" And it all started with 3 simple emails that proved the truth still matters, even in a world built on lies. Especially then. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts or experiences. Have you ever dealt with a toxic boss? How did you handle it? Let's discuss in the comments. Your support means everything. And remember, always keep those receipts.